Welcome to Color Compare of black and gray sort of colors. This is a huge category, and it's kind of a problem because we have just so many different colors that claim to be a black or gray, and really are something, I want to say, sort of different. They're off gray in an interesting way. Let's take a look. But first, we have our swatch sticks here, which are primed in Army Painter Matte White, Army Painter Brain Matter Beige, Army Painter Ash Gray, and a silver generic from the hardware store to see if we get any interesting metallic colors. And these swatch sticks then show that we have lots of grays that are on the blue side, and even some that tinge towards a green. And so on this side of the table today, I have the grays that are more of a pure color, though you can still see a little bit of an off gray in some of them. And so we're going to start on this side and see what we can find here. Starting off with our Citadel colors, let's take a look at just those offerings. These have been around for a while, and I have to say, I am a huge fan of this Black Legion. I use Black Legion all the time. It's one of my can't live without Citadel colors, of which there are a handful. The otherwise here, the Black Templar and the Gray are just pretty much more of a gray color. And it's interesting because on the camera, you might say, well, this Black Templar sure looks more black. Let me tell you, in person, it is more of a gray, and you can kind of see that is more gray than Black Legion, which is more of a black. And you can kind of see that better on some of these darker primers even, which is kind of a little weird, but it is definitely the case. Basillicanum Grey is a pretty decent middle-of-the-road gray without any major tinges to it. And so from there, we say, okay, what do we have maybe in some Vallejo offerings that are similar? And what we find is we have this greasy black that right off the bat we say is even lighter than Basillicanum Grey. If you look at those two side by side, it's definitely a lighter gray, and I would say even what it's more similar to is something I'll bring in from off camera here, and that is the Rattling Grime from Citadel as well. Rattling Grime being a little browner and a little more glossy than the greasy black, but I think you could get similar effects with it. As far as the Hospitaller Black, we're looking at a decent black here that is pretty close to Black Templar, but also not exactly far from Black Legion. If we can get these swatch sticks to behave here and get them next to each other, you see that Hospitaller Black and that Black Legion. Quite a nice little similar color there. Somewhere, it's almost somewhere between those two, but is definitely a welcome black from Vallejo. If we take these Citadel colors then and put them next to the Army Painter colors, we're going to see something kind of interesting here. And I think that is, we're going to leave Burnt Moss down there for a second. If we look at even Army Painter's sort of blackest of black, which they would be the Grim Black, we're going to notice that Grim Black here is a darker gray than the Basillicanum Grey, and pretty close to that Black Templar, but maybe even just a little bit lighter than it. And so it's kind of a very, very dark gray rather than a true black, and that is why I still keep that Black Legion around. Occultist Cloak is a slightly more blue gray, and is about the same darkness of gray here as that Grim Black. And then we have Gravelord Grey, which I want to say puts it somewhere between, if we put Basillicanum Grey between Gravelord and where's our Grim Black? There we go. We see that's kind of where they land maybe on that spectrum, a little bit on the lighter side, which is nice to have that variety available. All of these colors do well at sinking into those recesses. Of course, that sinking into the recesses does decrease with something like a Black Legion, where it's more dark all around. And I think that's actually a good thing. Now, I did leave this Burnt Moss down there for just a moment, and that's because when I grab that here, you're going to see that burnt moss is sort of what it advertises to be, and that is a little bit of a greener gray. So getting into that green side of things, it's got that slight green feeling to it, but it's not quite the level of green as something like a gunner camo, which we can clearly see is a gray-green as well, but more of a green to that gray. We take our army painter here against our Vallejo, we'll kind of see what we're looking at in terms of that comparison, and we'll do that here real quick for you now. Greasy black there, definitely a standout in this category still, and so I'm almost going to just set that one aside as kind of our lightest gray and similar to that rattling grind, but we will look at our Hospitaller black and see that it is even a bit darker than that grim black. And so if you want to pick up a darker black but don't quite want to go for the Black Legion of the Citadel line for whatever reason, this is a good buy here, and probably something that I'm going to explore switching to as my go-to SpeedPaint style, contrast style black. So there's the one side of this. And I almost hesitate to put the other side in the same video, but I'm going to, because I think anything with gray in the title should stay in the same video. First thing I want to do is grab out this Lancer Grey, which is this Vallejo color, and show you here that it's that green kind of thing we're dealing with again. And so we're going to get our gunner camo out here, and we're going to get our burnt moss out here, and we're just going to kind of put that Lancer Grey in the middle. And we see that honestly it says gray, but it's green. I'm sorry, it's green. In fact, I happen to have this camo cloak swatch from Army Painter just hanging out here because I'm painting miniatures with it, and I'm seeing, yeah, you know, I would grab Lancer Grey more in that green category, and so I'm actually going to kick it out into the green category, and we're not going to see it here in this video anymore. So there's just, again, some of our comparison swatches that we have brought in there. So what are we really looking at here now? We're looking at grays that are definitely more, most of these lean to the blue side. As you can kind of see at a glance on the screen, I hope. And so if we grab, I'm going to use our Army Painter as a little bit of a baseline for this one, because we just have two colors there. We see we've kind of got almost two options. This bottom Ashen Grey is what you would call a blue gray, but it is much more of a gray than a blue. The Runic Grey having that significantly stronger blue tone to it. The Runic Grey is something like you'd maybe use for like Space Wolves, except I don't like painting Space Marine armor with contrast paints too much. Speaking of Space Wolves, of course, Citadel does have their Space Wolves Grey. We put up against that Runic Grey, we see we're somewhere between these two, right? We're somewhere between the Runic Grey and the Ashen Stone there, with the official Space Wolves Grey. So much so I think you could honestly go either way, though Ashen Stone, maybe a heavy coat of it, seems to almost be a better option. So that's kind of an interesting thought there with the Space Wolves Grey. Otherwise, we're dealing with a few other things, and we've got Dreadful Visage in here because it's more of a gray than anything, and it's really kind of on a purple side of things, and it's really almost like a purple wash more than a true speed paint, and so there it is in the middle there, Dreadful Visage. We'll just kind of look at it in terms of these and see, yeah, it's a slightly purple wash color, but we're going to set it aside for now because we want to focus on the other Citadel offerings. Oh, we actually have one more Army Painter that I stuck in with the Citadel there, that Battleship Grey, which you can see is this lighter and bluer kind of gray there. Gryph Charger looks pretty close to that Runic Grey. It's more on the green-blue side than just on the blue side. Definitely a welcome paint as well in this category. Put that here with the rest of the Citadel colors, well, except for Dreadful Visage. Dreadful Visage, you've been banished. All right, so going back to these, and then bringing in our other, the Vallejo side of things, I want to first look at two other Citadel colors which is this Pilar Glacier. If you look at that and that Battleship Grey, you're seeing we've got that blue thing, but more of a gray tinge on it. I just know that folks are going to say, that looks, it's got to be kind of like that Pilar Glacier, or maybe it's like a Briar Queen Chill, and you can see Briar Queen Chill, very similar feel, just a little more of a seafoam green color to it. So you've got lots of good options here. And when we grab in these options, we have even more. And we're going to see these bottom three here of the Vallejo line. And I think I've pronounced Vallejo about 5 different ways in this video, so let me know how you pronounce it. We've got Starship Steel, which getting towards that battleship, but battleship versus starship. I guess starships are slightly greener and a hair darker. We got this Space Gray, which I guess is different than the steel on a starship and is a little darker, but still in that blue realm. So I'm keeping it up against that Battleship Gray there. And then we have this Viking Gray that is going to be close to our Ashen Stone here on the Army Painter side. So kind of an interesting comparison there. I don't think that Viking Gray, not really against the Runic Grey there. It's definitely darker and more of a intense blue color for sure. Setting those down for a minute, we are going to grab our Iceberg and our Black Lotus, and the main thing here is that these are almost the standout colors, that Black Lotus being on the darker side and the more of the green-blue color. Iceberg getting slightly darker here than the Runic Grey and the Ashen Stone, but in that same kind of feel of that bluish gray. Not much on that against that Battleship Grey. It's definitely lots darker there. But we do want to see those against the other Vallejo, and then we want to see how the Citadel stacks up to those. So let's grab those back here and take a look. And we have our Black Lotus there, still, nice dark color, and that Iceberg Grey. It's almost a darker, much darker version of that Starship Steel. And the Iceberg and the Viking Grey, if I swap them real quick here, you'll see are very similar in an interesting way, slightly different, but pretty similar. The Iceberg Grey maybe being a more of a cool or a cold color, where the Viking Grey has a little bit of life in it, almost like a good armor color or something like that. So neat stuff there. And while we've got these out, we'll go ahead and grab our Citadel to make all the different comparisons here. Seeing that our Gryph Charger Grey is lighter and more green than the Black Lotus, and definitely on the greener side from the Iceberg Grey there. And then we'll see how our Space Wolves Grey kind of stacks into this. Was there more? Oh, there's one more interesting comparison. The Gryph Charger. I want to show it against that Starship Steel. So we'll kind of stack these up creatively to be able to show you that. I do need about 3 more hands. I have to have 2 to hold the camera, 2 to hold the stick. So I don't know. Maybe I need 6 hands total. There's a bit of similarity there in the Citadel Gryph Charger Grey and that Starship Steel, with the Gryph Charger Grey being a little darker. And then we bring in our Space Wolves Grey. We just kind of want to look at it here against the Iceberg. Again, that's pretty similar. Iceberg being maybe a little darker, but they've definitely got some different behavior there that's interesting. And then the other one I wanted to show it against was this Viking Grey versus that Space Wolves Grey, and we see, again, a very different behavior between the Citadel and the Vallejo colors there, but similar in that regard. All right, well, after all of that, I think you can tell all the different comparisons we've made with all these. You can zoom around the video if you need to check certain ones out. Let me know if I didn't put something next to something that you want to see. I'm happy to make a short or something, or maybe a more in-depth video on a subset of these colors, but we're just about at that 15-minute mark, and so I really want to end this one here. Which of these do I use? I always like to answer that question. My number one thing that I use out of this category is the Black Legion. I definitely do use the Army Painter Grey over here as well, this Gravelord Grey. That is a staple in my painting. Otherwise, I'm using the swatch sticks just like you're using this video to pick out some because I have all these paints, so I might as well use them. But if you buy those too, you're going to be set up for quite a bit, and I'd probably pick up one over on this side, depending on your specific uses. Well, thanks for watching. Take care. Let's get gaming.